Welcome to the Elk Talk Podcast with Randy Newberg and Corey Jacobson. Presented by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
The goal is, what little you and I know about elk hunting, we share with people.
I've got an elk building. It's like 120 yards away. What do I do? First off, the thought would never cross my mind when an elk's being 120 yards away to call anybody on a cell phone.
All elk?
All the time? Only elk?
Only elk.
Well, it's us having conversations, so we usually go down some rabbit holes, but
If you hunt with Corey Jacobson, you will find the landscape is full of rabbit holes. We're just going to make this up as we go.
and you look at it like, oh, that's a target-rich environment. But if you're trying to single one out, a solo target there is much easier to go into than a big group.
We record everything, so there's no BSing, no lying, no faking it with us.
Did we hit the record
I thought I forgot to hit the record button. If you want to know something about elk hunting, this probably isn't the podcast to listen to. Should we give them a list of all the other podcasts where they might learn something?
Morning, Corey.
Good morning, Randy.
You sent me a screenshot the other day. It was like 34 below zero or something like that.
Yeah. We had 3 days last week that were minus 30 or lower, 3 days in a row.
Yeah, I saw that. It was a good time for me to be out of town. Left my wife to deal with all that.
You were in Portland, right?
I was in Portland picking up the Portland pox or whatever I got here. I went to the doc yesterday. They said, "Oh, you're not going to die. Suck it up, Buttercup, and get back to work." So,
Nice.
yeah, my nose, I look like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer here. My nose is raw from blowing it all day long. So if you hear me hacking up a big loogie or something there, it's because they gave me this decongestant thing.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it's working. But, boy, you got to blow your nose a lot. But maybe.
Welcome to the Elk Talk Podcast with Randy Newberg and Corey Jacobson. Presented by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
The goal is, what little you and I know about elk hunting, we share with people.
I've got an elk building. It's like 120 yards away. What do I do? First off, the thought would never cross my mind when an elk's being 120 yards away to call anybody on a cell phone.
All elk?
All the time? Only elk?
Only elk.
Well, it's us having conversations, so we usually go down some rabbit holes, but
If you hunt with Corey Jacobson, you will find the landscape is full of rabbit holes. We're just going to make this up as we go.
and you look at it like, oh, that's a target-rich environment. But if you're trying to single one out, a solo target there is much easier to go into than a big group.
We record everything, so there's no BSing, no lying, no faking it with us.
Did we hit the record
I thought I forgot to hit the record button. If you want to know something about elk hunting, this probably isn't the podcast to listen to. Should we give them a list of all the other podcasts where they might learn something?
Morning, Corey.
Good morning, Randy.
You sent me a screenshot the other day. It was like 34 below zero or something like that.
Yeah. We had 3 days last week that were minus 30 or lower, 3 days in a row.
Yeah, I saw that. It was a good time for me to be out of town. Left my wife to deal with all that.
You were in Portland, right?
I was in Portland picking up the Portland pox or whatever I got here. I went to the doc yesterday. They said, "Oh, you're not going to die. Suck it up, Buttercup, and get back to work." So,
Nice.
yeah, my nose, I look like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer here. My nose is raw from blowing it all day long. So if you hear me hacking up a big loogie or something there, it's because they gave me this decongestant thing.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it's working. But, boy, you got to blow your nose a lot. But maybe I'll just use my shirt sleeve here. I don't know. But have you ever been to Portland when it snows an inch?
So during the Portland show in like 2013, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, they got like 2 inches of snow that then rained and froze overnight on it. People were leaving their cars in the freeway, like literally parking them in the lanes of the freeway and getting out and walking. The police were telling everybody, park your car and leave it. We'll help get it out of the way, but don't drive.
That's exactly how it was last Thursday.
Really?
Yeah. Matthew, my son, he lives out in Beaverton. He called me. He's like, "Hey, Dad, tomorrow morning when the show starts, I don't know if I can get into town. It's supposed to snow an inch or two." I'm like, "Well, you got a Toyota Tacoma. I'm pretty sure you can get through that." He's like, "No, it's not that my truck can't." He said, "There will be cars stalled and just abandoned in the middle of the road all the way from here to Portland." I'm like, "What?" I thought he was joking me. Look out my hotel window. I staying at this place where I-5 comes across the Columbia River. And that's exactly what happened. And the shuttle at the hotel, they came in, they're like, "We're not running the shuttle. It's too bad out there." I'm like, "It's only an inch of snow. You want me to drive for you?" And I couldn't talk him into it. So I got a hold of Uber. I had an Uber, you hit that and it tells you where the car is, how many miles and how soon they'll be there. Said he was 1.4 miles away. He'd be there in 8 minutes. And then it said 20 minutes. And then 20 minutes. 2 hours later, he hadn't moved and it still said, "Your ride will arrive in 20-some minutes."
Wow.
So I called Matthew. I'm like, "Are you negotiating and locking in the hubs and dodging all this traffic and going, maybe just drive down in the ditch or the Meridian or something?" He's like, "Yeah, I've been on the road for 2 hours. However long, I don't know, Beaverton to Portland isn't more than 20 miles. He said, "I'll be by in about a half hour to pick you up." So when he picked me up, I'd been on the Uber for 2.5 hours and
still wasn't there.
They were still coming.
Wow.
I never seen such a misfit kind of, I don't know.
How was traffic at the show?
Well, when the people got there, they stayed there because they didn't want to drive home, I think.
Yeah.
But then they have a rail line that kind of comes right to the show, right near there. And a lot of people said, I just jumped on the public rail line. I'm not going to do that. So anyhow, that's what I did last week for 5 days.
Fun.
But came back, no injured arms, no food poisoning, nothing like that.
Didn't fall through a shower door this time.
No, got
That's
to
good.
talk to a lot of really fun people. They all asked, "When's Corey coming to this show?" I'm like, "I don't know. He's afraid of your food."
Well, my experience there wasn't good with the ice storm. Looks like I missed another good year, but I did go down to a Hunt Expo in Utah just for the afternoon on Saturday. We had a basketball game Friday night, and then went down Saturday afternoon and hung out at the Peaks Equipment booth with Bryce and that crew for a bit. But
yeah,
it was good to meet some people and listen to their feedback on Destination Elk and the Elk Talk podcast. People are so friendly and just positive. It's really rewarding to go and get to meet like-minded people.
Yeah, that's a fun part about the Portland show. You get a lot of people there from Oregon, Washington, even some from northern Idaho. And they're some of the most fun people to talk to.
Yeah.
And they all make jokes about the weather and how the traffic shut down. It becomes a pretty funny conversation piece. But it was a ton of fun. It was good to go and get the feedback. And while I was there, I did a podcast with the director of Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. That was good. Went and met with some of their local groups out there. That was good. So, yeah. And then I came home and everyone told me, "Check your credit card. Arizona hit credit cards the other day."
Yeah.
Well, they must have transposed my credit card number or something. Cause
you haven't got the notification yet?
No, I don't know. Maybe they're just going to hand deliver mine and ask me to put it in one of those old swiping card machines or something. I don't know. Either that or maybe I didn't draw. You suppose I could do that?
Well, there's always a chance.
Yeah. And then Alaska came out this morning, Corey. Did you apply for another elk tag up there?
I didn't know they had elk hunting in Alaska.
I'm surprised your phone hasn't been ringing with the 4 people who drew saying, Corey, help a brother out here.
I'll help you out. Burn that tag and stay home. Nope, I did not apply. In fact, I don't think I've even been to the Alaska Game and Fish website since I was in Alaska last.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
You see how many emails we got in the last week? What did we do to get that many emails?
I just think it's that time of year people are starting to think about tags and applications and strategies for the fall. So,
yeah, one guy sent us the same email 4 different times on 4 different days.
I reached out to Derek and Daniel. I'm like, hey, are you guys just forwarding the same email to us? Because I've read this one 4 times now, and evidently they've got an automation set up in their email flow that kicks emails to you and I when it comes through from that. And they're like, yeah, sometimes the automation glitches a little. So I think the guy only emailed us once. The system keeps sending it to us.
Well, I'm going to blame it on them.
Exactly.
Then we keep getting these emails from Spotify. Spotify wants us to.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're looking to replace Joe Rogan, I guess.
I don't think replace. Maybe just compliment.
There you go. If they took 2 zeros off that Spotify check, I'd be there. I'd work for 1% of what Rogan's making.
Exactly.
I'm surprised you haven't been on his podcast, Corey.
Yeah, no, he's mentioned to me a time or 2 on there, and we've communicated and sent messages back and forth. But I'd like to go on there and talk wolf hunting with him because I know he got in the debate on Colorado wolves a little bit. And
saw that.
I'd like to take him wolf hunting here in Idaho because I know he recognizes the damage that they do, and I think he does a good job of playing both sides of but being open to both sides of the discussion.
Yeah.
But at the same time, being an advocate for some of the things that we agree on. So.
Yeah, but boy, there's some people that if he doesn't take their side, man, they get mad. Wow. Yeah. It's like, dang. If we got that mad, we'd be mad all day long.
No kidding.
We laugh more than anything. So,
at ourselves more than anything too.
Yeah, for sure. That's the best humor I can think of. We got to do a podcast with Bryce and David from Peaks.
Yeah.
The last time we did that, I did it. I think you were starving yourself to death with Destination Elk. You guys were out eating squirrels or mice or rats or something. And I said, well, since Corey might starve to death, I better get a podcast done. And then David had a malfunction in his technology, and it sounded like it just didn't work out well. So anyhow, we got to get them on. And they told me they have a promo code called Elk Talk. They said they already have one.
Really?
I'm like, really? I didn't know that. I didn't. When did you tell us you were doing that?
I'd imagine there's a lot of brands that probably just go and create the promo code Elk Talk and Randy and Corey or whatever.
Yeah, and we don't even know
because people are using it everywhere. So yeah, I'll always try that. Type in Elk Talk and see if it works. But
yeah, so if you want trekking poles or headlamps or all sleeping bags, tarps, tents, teepees, all the cool stuff Peaks makes, I guess I should go there at Peaks Equipment and use promo code Elk Talk, huh?
Yeah. Well, here's the other cool thing.
Yeah.
In partnership with Peaks through Destination Elk, because they sponsor Destination Elk, we're giving away $8,000 in elk hunting gear.
What?
And
can I apply?
You can. Absolutely, yeah. Unlike all the promotions and giveaways you do, you don't let me apply, but I would let you apply for this. I would just make sure Bryce knows not to. If your name gets drawn, just toss it back in there and don't tell Randy. But take his money. Take his money for sure. But now every year we do a custom T-shirt for Destination Elk, and this year's probably one of my favorites, but they're only available while Destination Elk's going on, which is only just another week or 2, and only available at Peaks Equipment. So if you buy that shirt, that's the only way you can be entered to win.
Really?
And Every
$8,000
shirt you buy, you get an entry. So,
wow,
but yeah, and
$8,000. You know, that's a
and
lot of money, Corey.
it is. Somebody made a comment and said, well, in today's standards, that's probably only 2 pieces of gear. I'm like, well, I don't know what kind of gear you're buying, but this is pretty much my entire elk hunting package: bow, backpack, clothes, everything Peaks makes, basically. You know, my system from Peaks. So it's a pretty sweet package.
Yeah, it's too bad someone has to be married to a person who wakes up every day to say, I got to just be a sourpuss and make the world a worse place.
Boy, there's people out there like that.
Boy, isn't there? That's crazy.
Yeah.
But hey, I made it through my 36th wedding anniversary since the last time we talked.
And were you home for that? You weren't in Portland?
I left the next morning.
Okay.
And that's when I got, a couple days later, I got a phone message from you with a screenshot of your truck temperature thermometer or whatever, whatever, 34 below or something. So I logged on, I looked at the weather forecast in Bozeman, and it was, I don't know, 26 below or 24 below. I'm like, whoop, not calling home today to see how things are going.
You just called your snowplow guy and made sure he was up to speed, right?
Absolutely. Called my plumber buddy. Hey, would you drive by my house and make sure there's no frozen pipes with water squirting out the window or something? But, oh, wow. But so where do we want to start with all these questions? Do we want to go through them, or can I? Before we go through them, can I remind everybody that it's still a ways off, but by the time this podcast drops, you got a couple weeks left to get your New Mexico applications in.
No,
I think that one is March 19th, and you want to make sure you get that figured out, because in New Mexico, there's no point system. So it's not like you're building points for next year, or if you miss the deadline somehow, well, I'll go buy a point a week later or a month later, like in Wyoming or some of those states. So, yeah, New Mexico.
And what's the requirements in New Mexico? You have to buy a license, right? Like
$65, and then you got to buy a conservation stamp, which I think is another $4 or $5, and then you got to front all the money for whatever the tag fee is. So that gobbles up a little bit of someone's budget.
Not quite as much as a special tag in Wyoming, but
no, not even close. So they got that one, and then a couple weeks later, and we'll get into this in the next podcast, I'm sure, Montana and Colorado both have a deadline this year, I think, of April Fool's Day.
Are they both on? I know they're right there at the front of April.
Yeah, I think this year they're both April 1st. So I don't know what to make of that.
Pretty fitting for both states.
Yeah. So I just got the new Colorado regulations downloaded. Kind of interesting how they've had to change it now with the archery over the counter for non-residents going to a draw. It's kind of a new feature in there, the way you look at it. I'm old, right? It's like, oh, same as last year, and then they throw a curveball like that. It's like, dang it, now I got to read the instruction manual again,
which just doesn't sink in like it used to.
No, not even in the least. But so, oh well, it's out there. If you want to go, make sure that you got your ducks in a row and that you don't miss the deadline of the 19th of March.
Yeah, I think our next podcast we need to talk about Montana and Colorado, because I've got questions for you on both of them. So
really, I'll make it up.
Well, I know, and I just the points in Montana, because I've got 1 point. Because I had 4 when they changed the rules, and then they took all my points away because they don't let you get more than 3, and they don't just lock you in at 3, they kick you back to 0. So I had to start over there. And so now I'm at 1, which I think 1 is probably the worst odds you can have of drawing. But I'm going to try and get a general elk license for Montana this year.
Wow. You should
do that.
In
Colorado, I've got 19 deer points that I'm ready to spend for this year. So
wow,
we can talk a little bit about deer, and I've got a few elk points too. So now that archery's all draw, I need to start looking at what to do for elk there again.
Yeah. Well,
but we'll save that for the next one. We've got a few weeks till that one's relevant.
Well, one of the emails that we got was a guy said that he followed Corey's advice and he emailed the Doge committee and recommended that I be placed on the position as the director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Like, oh man, come on, don't be doing that.
Yeah, no, that's what we need to do.
No, the new one is Brian Nesvik. Got appointed as the director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. He was previously, he retired for a year or two, and then he'd retired from Wyoming Game and Fish. He was their director. So I think why he's been appointed is because he is really familiar with the Endangered Species Act, with grizzly bears, with wolves.
Yeah.
And those all fall under the purview. First, they start at the congressional level, but since Congress never does anything, they kind of end up on the lap of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So I've met Brian a time or two. We've talked at meetings and conventions. The person in the email said, you ought to have him on the podcast. Well, maybe we should, but we might get him fired after about, let's let him at least get a little tenure going to his position there before we put him out there on the plank and ask him all kinds of questions. But no, I think that's going to be beneficial to hunters to have a director like Brian.
Absolutely.
He and a lot of people will say, with the whole thing going on with all the terminations and stuff like that, I don't even want to get into that political mess. So I just try to look at it and say, okay, what's the situation? The situation is Brian is the director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. How can we figure out ways to move the ball forward on things that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is doing? And hopefully that means that we have a little bit more priority or interest in forcing the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to have to address the court order that said, hey, you got to make a decision on grizzly bears. You can't keep punting. I mean, that's the attorney tactic there. Apologies to all the attorneys listening.
That didn't seem sincere.
No, it wasn't. Dang.
I'm really sorry.
No, you go tell him you're sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, say it like you mean it. Well, I don't mean it.
Yeah. Dang, was it that obvious, Corey?
Pretty obvious, yeah.
Anyhow, that is a tactic that is often used in the legal world is, well, let's just delay and delay. Well, now the courts have said you can't delay much longer, folks. So we're going to get a decision from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service pretty soon about what they're going to do with the grizzly bear status of either listed or delisted as it applies to a lot of the grizzly bears, Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. Guarantee you that if U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, twice in the past, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the feds have said, look, we got too many of them here in Yellowstone. We're going to delist them. And both times they got sued. And the litigators found some judge who was sympathetic to their cause. And the federal judge said, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, I don't care what you guys think about the number of grizzly bears. You're not going to delist them until you prove this or prove that or whatever. So this would be the third time the federal government has said, please let the states take this over. We've grown more grizzly bears in the greater Yellowstone region than we know what to do with. There's not room for any more. And I know it'll be the third time they get litigated. I guess the real question is, will it be the third time a judge decides against them?
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
Oh well.
I mean, that's hopeful.
Yeah.
How cool would it be to have a grizzly bear hunting season in the lower 48? To be able to manage the populations the way that hunting manages the populations and be able to say that, yeah, I mean, the odds of any of us actually drawing that tag, because it's going to be so limited, is next to zero. So I'm not excited I'm excited for the opportunity to be able to put in to hunt a grizzly bear in the lower 48, knowing that I'll probably never get that tag, but more excited that, hey, this is how it should be managed. Hunting should be the management tool, and biology should be the method that we use to determine the holding capacity and the populations of all the animals, including grizzly bears and wolves.
Yeah. Well, now let's not get too carried away on the common sense side here, Corey.
I know.
But no, I think I would celebrate and be all excited, because to me, it shows that even with huge population growth in the greater Yellowstone region, with the huge amount of human activity going on there, we as a society have made it a high enough priority to accommodate them that we've made a place for a species that requires as much wild country as grizzly bears. And we've done it. So let's celebrate that.
Yep.
The sky is
manage it. Like let's not let it get out of hand like it is getting, and like the wolves got. Let's get ahead of it.
Yeah. So I probably wouldn't apply for a grizzly bear tag. Not that I don't want a season. It's just that I've went to Alaska and hunted brown bears with my grandfather before he passed away. He was an Alaska resident. And I just think others like Corey would.
Oh man,
you guys would get. It'd mean more to you guys than it would to me. So I'll stick to hunting doe whitetails or something while you guys are out. But no, I'll go to the mat to try and defend and advocate that we need to manage all species the same as we do, predator and prey. We need to manage them all. Yeah. And we need to have safety nets in place so that they aren't going to disappear. And we've done that. The safety nets are there. And
And I've spent time in all 3 states, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, in grizzly country, and seen overpopulations of them, and seen more grizzlies than I'm comfortable seeing. But it would be pretty awesome to have a tag in hand and go looking for them. And I don't know, there's just, we've been in some pretty sketchy situations with grizzly bears. And I think these grizzly bears in the Rocky Mountains are they're angry. They're just a different bear than the grizzly bear in Alaska. They've just got a chip on their shoulder and a chip on their tooth that's causing a toothache, and they just walk around grumpy all the time. And somebody said, well, we need to hunt them because they aren't scared of people. I'm like, I don't think a hunted grizzly bear is going to be any more scared of people.
No.
That's not in their DNA.
No, and it's not like there's not going to be within any management plan enough allowed hunting mortality that you're going to impress upon all the grizzlies that, better watch out now, humans are shooting at us. No. 99.99% of the humans they encounter are still walking around with a picnic basket in their bag, and the bear wants it. Like Yogi and Boo Boo. Hey, Boo Boo. But anyhow, that's one of the things that has popped up. I think Brian's going to do a good job. He comes from an agency that is all about the North American model. And there'll be people that try to, either through litigation or congressional pressure, push the agency this way or push the agency that way. And that's fine. I just think when he does come out with things that are in the spirit of the North American model, hunters need to be there to support that. Because most often what happens is when they do that, they get hammered. Like his predecessor, Martha Williams, who was the director of Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks before she took that job, she came out with some things that were pretty affirmative to the position of hunting. And man, she just got lit up by the other sides. So when those people stick their neck out, we got to be there to support them. So, you want to know? Cool. Have you been following the thing in Colorado about
thing?
That's a good question. So Colorado, we all celebrated that they won the ballot initiative in November by 10 points. Started out 4 or 5 points behind, won by 10 points to defeat the idea that the ballot box is how we determine the management of mountain lions. Well, these same groups haven't had any luck at the ballot box. They haven't had any luck trying to sway the commission. So where do they go next? They go to the legislature. So there's a bill in the Colorado legislature. So all you Colorado people listening, the bill is House Bill 1258. And if you don't take 5 minutes to call your state representative or your state senator about this bill, you're going to have a hard time proving to us that you're that concerned. And here's what the bill says. Currently, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the statutes and everything that give that department its rules, its guidelines, and its purpose, say that Parks and Wildlife shall use hunting, fishing, and trapping as the mechanisms for wildlife management. This bill would change shall, which all you attorneys out there now, please speak up now that I've heckled you. There's a big difference between shall and may in the legal world. So this bill would change shall to they may use hunting, fishing, and trapping. Well, that's a huge difference. It now creates a lot of ambiguity in a lot of other statutes that are kind of built off that charter or that charge that Parks and Wildlife has. And that's what these groups want. They want ambiguity. They want to interject all kinds of questions and, well, let's argue about the definition of may or shall.
Yeah. We aren't taking it away. We're not
right,
getting rid of hunting.
Right. So it definitely would be a huge change to the priority that Colorado Parks and Wildlife gives to hunting and fishing and trapping as mechanisms, even though through ballots they've kind of got rid of most of their trapping in Colorado. Hunting and fishing are still what fund the agency. It's what gives them tools to collect data, gives them tools to manage numbers by either increasing harvest or decreasing harvest. So you get rid of shall, and now all of a sudden the department is like, well, we may do this, we may do that, we may do this, we may do that, or we may not do any of them. And that's just a litigator's dream world.
Well, and so here's the wording from the actual bill. Mm-hmm. In Colorado's wildlife statutes, the legislative declaration commits the state to use hunting, trapping, and fishing as the primary methods of affecting wildlife harvest. The bill requires the Parks and Wildlife Commission to use this bill requires the Parks and Wildlife Commission to use the best available wildlife and ecological science to adopt rules that benefit wildlife, whole ecosystem health, and all Coloradans. And then down under Section 1, they're suggesting it be amended to, it used to say the state shall utilize hunting, trapping, and fishing as the primary methods of effecting necessary wildlife harvests.
Yeah.
They want to change it to the state may authorize hunting, trapping, and fishing in accordance with the best available wildlife and ecological science to benefit wildlife, whole ecosystem health, and all Coloradans. Well, then the next part used to say the commission is responsible for all wildlife management, for licensing requirements, and for promulgation of regulations and orders concerning wildlife programs. They want to change it to the commission is responsible for all wildlife management, for licensing requirements, and for the adoption of rules and issuance of orders concerning wildlife programs. The commission shall apply in its decision-making the best available wildlife and ecological science to adopt rules that benefit wildlife, whole ecosystem health, and all Coloradans.
Yeah.
So they're completely putting the commission the commission's responsible for the promulgation of regulations. Now, basically, the commission's in charge of making the regulations. They want to change that and say that the commission is responsible for the adoption of rules, meaning we get to create the rules and you're responsible to adopt those rules.
Yeah, and
That's the scary part.
Right, and they have their hired scientists. People can't see me using the air quotes where I say hired scientists. Science is supposed to be a completely objective, impartial, non-influenced pursuit. Well, if I hire you and I pay you $100,000 to analyze this, project, that a game and fish agency said, here are the findings. I bet you for my $100,000, you're going to come up with different findings that are very, very beneficial to what I want to do.
Yeah.
So
and then I'm going to tell you to trust the science.
Right. And so that's where these groups that come up with this stuff, that's why they want to interject all this ambiguity. They're going to be arguing in Colorado over, well, then what's the best science? Is it the paid for hire science, or is it the science the department comes up with as, objective scientists? Is it the science that they share with other agencies that is pretty objective? So this is their next approach in Colorado. So if you live in Colorado, you need to be on this. House Bill, what was it? 1258.
1258. Yep.
Yes.
Let's see here. I was just looking to see. So it is Representative Tammy Story and Representative Elizabeth Velasco are the prime sponsors of
And does it say what
25-1258.
1258. Yeah. Does it say what committee it ended up in, or is it going to end up
right now? It's in the Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, folks, you can't be asleep when this stuff is happening. And if 100 of our listeners were to go home or go to the office, sit down and take 5 minutes and weigh in on that, that could be enough to kill that.
That's cute. So, you think we have 100 listeners?
Well, I'm optimistic, Corey. Maybe they don't all live in Colorado, but hey, the 12 listeners we have, if you know anyone, if you got family in Colorado, call them up, tell them you got to get on this.
Absolutely.
But oh well. Hey, are you glad you burned your points in Colorado for elk? No, have you seen the new change that their group came up with for 2028?
For 2028, yeah. That's why I'm kind of looking at mule deer and thinking the same thing, that I need to get those points gone. And between now and 2028, this year is the best season dates, at least the later season dates for third and fourth season hunts. So
I'd be on that like a rat on a Cheeto, man. I'd be getting with it. But oh well. So that's kind of to me right now, that's the biggest alert of what's going on out in elk country in terms of legislation and pieces that I think could affect hunters in a big way. And a lot of our audience, I know, hunts in Colorado, and they say, well, I'm a non-resident, I can't really do anything about it. No, I get that. But you could really weigh in with your family, friends, or anyone you know in Colorado.
Yep.
Make sure they are aware and make sure that they are doing what they need to do.
Yeah. And just understanding the danger of that wording. And obviously, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. I mean, they're hiding something so that they can change something without anybody getting alerted, which is so deceptive. That if you want to change it, change it.
Yeah.
But don't change it to the point where you make people think that nothing's going to change when your agenda and your whole reason for doing it is to change it in the end.
Yeah.
But once that gets passed, if that bill gets passed, then the commission has no say. The commission is forced to adopt the rules based on what these people think are the best science for managing wildlife. And we know it's not going to be through hunting.
What? Come on, Corey.
Or
These
fishing or
folks-
trapping.
No, and that's where these folks want to take it. So the real question is, are we as hunters and people who believe in, this North American model, this science-based idea, are we going to get with the program, or are we going to just sit there and say, all right, yeah, we give up. I'm going to tap out here. I'm not good at tapping out. Like my wife, we're talking about a lot of things lately, and she's like, "You're serious, aren't you?" I'm like, "I am absolutely serious. If you think that I'm going down without a fight, it's just not in me." And so, yeah, these are interesting times, and all this stuff. I think the trend of what we're seeing that we've talked about a lot, and I just keep wanting people to think about, is our issues are no longer being settled at commission levels. They are taking these issues to legislatures, to ballot initiatives and stuff like that. And we got to learn to play that game, and we got to be willing to jump in. The excuse we often hear is, well, I just don't like politics. Well, okay. You don't need to like politics, but someday you might wake up and not have a place to hunt, or might not have seasons or whatever. So, and I think with our platforms, we try to inform people about what those are, where those concerns are, and how they can make a difference. So, I hope they do.
We've shown that if hunters will band together, they can make a difference, but it takes action now. It's not sitting back and complaining online. You've got to make the right phone call. You've got to send the right email, and we have to have a lot of people that are willing to do that.
Yeah. You want to know what you talked me into doing the other day, Corey, and you probably didn't even know it.
I don't know.
I think on our last podcast, we got into a discussion about black bears.
Yeah.
I applied for a black bear tag in your lovely state of Idaho.
Oh, did you?
Yep.
Oh, there's only a couple of units where you can actually apply for tags. So the rest of them are just over the counter.
I know. And my thought was, if I drew, I could talk my buddy Corey into coming along with me, and he could pick up all the antlers that I've hung in the trees, and I'd shoot the bear.
That works. Yeah. The only problem is we have to go early enough that the rattlesnakes aren't out, because I avoid rattlesnake country in the spring. So
really, well, that's just a heck of a deal.
Yeah,
I thought a guy like you wouldn't even fret and worry about something like rattlesnakes.
Man, I'll wrestle a grizzly bear, but I'll run from a rattlesnake.
Well, when do we got to go then before the rattlesnakes are out?
Well, my rule of thumb is I don't shed hunt after May 1st in rattlesnake country.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that doesn't leave you a whole lot of time.
Well, I better get there early. But that assumes I'm going to draw. The odds of me drawing are, well, I struck out in Arizona. I struck out in Alaska. So I don't think you need to see me on your doorstep down in Idaho very soon. But
man, I just thought you look at it as you're on a bad streak and the streak's just going to continue. I look at it as your odds just go up every time that you strike out.
There you go.
Every time you miss drawing a tag, your odds of drawing the next one just go up a little bit.
Well, and then the scientists, the number scientists, are going to get a hold of us and say, Corey, no, that's wrong.
That's optimism, though. That's optimism. Whether it's right or wrong on the odds side, I just have to believe that, man, the more times I fall down, the chances of me getting up they go up considerably.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you go to Vegas and you're playing the roulette wheel and you put it on black or red every time. Say you put it on black and 8 times it goes red. Well, guess what? The odds of the 9th time odds of 9 of them in a row being red are pretty slim
Yeah,
in your head, even though the next time it's still 50-50.
exactly.
Yeah, that's part of it. I guess there'd be some sort of condition that some psychiatrist would say,
Oh,
"Oh, that's
sure.
a whatever theory or whatever."
You're ignoring reality. I think
Yeah,
we all suffer from that if we play the points
yeah,
game in these states.
yeah. The bad news right now is, and this isn't going to affect deer as much as it is, or elk as much as it is deer and pronghorn, but February was the most snow that we've
Yeah.
received in Montana in, I think, 30 some years.
Yep.
We were doing pretty good in terms of, harshness for the deer and elk through January, but boy, it is stacking up here. Is it doing the same at your place?
It is, yeah. In fact, this is probably, in the last 10 years that I can remember, this is probably the second most snow we've had at our house. And I think we've gotten as much snow as we ever have. Fortunately, where we live, it's gotten up to 35 or 38 degrees a couple times, so it settles that snow and it's not piling up. But you only have to go 400 or 500 feet in elevation above where I live, where the temperatures haven't gotten up there, and there's 6, 7, 8 feet of snow pretty rapidly. I think we have about 4 feet standing on the flat here, but
yeah, it's tough here. And I'm looking at maps. I'm looking at the U.S. Drought Monitor map right now as we're talking. You and I are not in a drought, it doesn't look like.
What are we, like 140% or something above?
Yeah, the snowpack and then the moisture level in the snowpack, we're well over 100% across Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, at least western Idaho or western Wyoming.
Which is
But
good.
then you get into Arizona, man, they're sucking air. They've got some moisture lately, but it's a lot of red and brown, which if you brown is exceptional drought. Red is extreme drought. More than half of Arizona is in it. Maybe I'm happy I didn't draw an elk tag in Arizona this year then. Colorado's doing good moisture wise. They're kind of like us. Utah, northern Nevada doing pretty good. Southwest Utah is not good. Southern Nevada is not good. So across the bands of elk country, other than Arizona, moisture's looking good. My worry is it might look too good come late March. And
I was going to say February. I mean, the good news is the snow has come in measured proportions, so I think the animals have migrated appropriately. Obviously, cold weather and heavy snow is not good for them, but they're set up to adapt to that for a limited time. The real hardship comes first couple weeks of March into the middle of March, and if we keep that cold weather, ground freezes up, they aren't getting the feed, they're on their last reserves, and that's where it gets pretty dangerous.
Yeah. So let's hope the next 6 weeks are moderate.
Yeah.
We got enough snow in the mountains here in Montana that the trout aren't going to die of thirst. That's for sure.
That's good.
So, but those are things that, we get a lot of questions, people asking, what's the winter kill going to be like for elk? It's a lot less for elk.
Yeah.
Usually they're so hardy and so tough. They can just get through a lot of these conditions way better than mule deer. And, which gets to this study, about, there's just quite a few of them coming out actually, about elk replacing mule deer or displacing mule deer. And the real question that I think even the people who are doing the studies are asking is this elk moving the mule deer out of whatever location or drainage, or is it the fact that the habitat changes of forage, of everything else, are happening in a way that with fire and you name it, that habitat ends up transitioning to a phase or a stage in the cycle that it benefits elk and doesn't benefit mule deer, because elk are way more generalists in what they can eat. They're grazers, but they can be browsers if they want to be. And mule deer, unfortunately, are just super selective. They gotta have these perfect habitat conditions, mostly browse. And so when we see a lot of these winter range fires in places that, just it's not coming back as sage or buckbrush or bitterbrush, it's coming back as grasses. And that is far more beneficial to elk than it is to mule deer. So I've been reading where some people are like, yeah, we got to kill more elk because that's what's running the mule deer out of here. Well, if it's all habitat related and you went and killed more elk, but no mule deer came back because the habitat just didn't give them what they needed, guess what?
That's not the answer.
We don't have elk or mule deer at that point. So It's going to be interesting to see where this new, if you want to call it, series of studies or this new research path is going. As I don't doubt that there's some competition for quote unquote space and just being away and undisturbed, and bedding cover and whatever. But I think it's too early to jump to the conclusions that some people are already jumping to. That I knew it. That's why we don't have so many mule deer. We got too darn many elk. Well, if the mule deer habitat has went in a crapper, that's an issue that needs to be addressed. We need to improve mule deer habitat.
Yeah,
we need to get rid of those feral horses.
So many things going on. Like you look at the fires, the logging, all these different things that create different habitats. But then you just consider, as you're talking, I'm like, well, the wolves also push elk around, so the elk are on the move more. So they're taking advantage of different feed sources than what they typically would. Typically, they'd find a feed source and stay there until it was gone, which takes a whole lot of overgrazing from a herd of elk to completely wipe out a feed source. But now they're moving from feed source to feed source to feed source. And if they happen to get in an area where they're competing with mule deer on that feed source, then that might have an effect on it. But what is it, because the elk are overpopulated? No, it's because the elk are moving now and not as stationary. So there's so many pieces and components to trying to manage wildlife. And
and then when I was out in Oregon, there's all kinds of stuff going on there about wolves. 1/3 of the state, the eastern third of the state, wolves are delisted at the federal level, but not in the western 2/3. And our commission a long time ago came up with a wolf plan that does not allow for lethal removal. Well, some of the studies are showing that in places where you have wolves and mountain lions together, the wolves are learning that, hey, these mountain lions do a lot of good killing. How about we just chase them off their kill and we'll eat it? Because no lion is going to sit there and fight 8 wolves. They're just like, I'm out of here. I'll go kill another one. So there's some data out there in some of these studies that's starting to come out that questions, is the presence of wolves forcing lions to have to kill more? And what does that mean to deer? Because lions focus more on deer and less on elk. And what does that do to lions? Every time they go and decide, I'm going to take on this buck, I might get jabbed in the eyeball with a tine or something. The amount of energy they have to spend and the risk they take of having to kill more often because the wolves are taking their kills, that eventually wears out the cats, the lions. And so there's so many of these things that are emerging out there, and it takes time to study it. You can't just do a 2-week study. These are 5-year, 6-year, 10-year studies. It'll be interesting to see what we learn from that and what kind of conflicts or solutions some people will come up with. Like, hey, we got too many wolves. It's to the detriment of lions. And That would be interesting to force some of the groups of the warm and fuzzy,
To choose.
charismatic megafauna, as they call them, have to choose. Well, what do you want, wolves or lions?
Yeah.
Because the science is showing you aren't going to have both of them.
Well, it's like when the, logging was starting to get shut down over the spotted owls and the monkey flowers and all these different things. And they're like, what happens if we find out the spotted owls are eating the monkey flowers? Who do we protect then?
Yeah.
And that's, I think it's funny because we have all these studies going on, but really people on the ground, sportsmen on the ground, see it almost immediately. I can remember when the wolves first started becoming a problem, it was the houndsmen that were out in the field and they're like, cats are changing. Like mountain lions are changing. Like they're not coming into these same areas, these same winter grounds anymore. Wolves are pushing them into different areas and we aren't finding any cat tracks in here.
Yeah.
And, that was back in the late 90s, early 2000s that they were noticing that. And so, yeah, it's a very delicately balanced ecosystem, and one little change to it can send a whole cascade of changes rippling that sometimes, like you said, you don't see for years, and then it takes years to study it. And by then you realize, well, that's not even an issue anymore because the habitat's changed because this fire came through. And it's sometimes feels like we're chasing our tail.
Yeah, it was funny when I did that podcast with the director of Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. She's like, we've run into this conflict where we've had one federally protected species, sea lions, causing the demise of another federally protected. One of our runs of cohos are on the endangered species list. I said, well, what happened? Because now you got to choose one or the other. Because I guess the sea lions got so thick in the Columbia River, and they're waiting below these dams where a lot of these endangered cohos would end up. She said, we got permission from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. There actually is some provisions, I guess, in the Endangered Species Act for this, and I was not aware of that. They went and she used the term removed. I wanted to ask, so you just moved them to your neighbor's place?
Yeah.
Really, they killed them. They got rid of a lot of these sea lions, and she said it made a huge difference. She said, people can say that predation isn't going to be, everything will balance out. Well, when man manipulates whatever environment, let's say manipulates the Columbia River or the Willamette River with dams and locks and everything, in that process, we're giving advantage to one species at the expense of another. And I use the sea lion endangered coho thing as an example because it really struck me. She said, you know what? That made such a difference that I see a really bright future that endangered coho run is going to get taken off the endangered species list.
Really?
Yeah.
But then you also have to look at it and say non-endangered salmon runs are down. Well, it's the same probably mechanism that's causing those to be down. At least it's contributing and it makes a major impact. I mean, you've got commercial fishing, you've got predators, you've got dams, you've got all these different factors. But when they're forced to choose between two endangered species, and that makes that much of a difference, but we can't manage those endangered species because they're endangered species unless they start affecting another endangered species. We can't manage them when they're affecting non-endangered species until those species become endangered. And it's just, I mean, I don't know enough about salmon and sea lions, but I know that there's an effect there, and it's no different than wolves and elk. You have an overabundance of predators, the prey are going to suffer whether they're on the endangered species list or not.
Yeah.
And that's why hunting is so important for the management of that.
Yeah. And where I'm going with that is she made it very clear. I was left with there was no ambiguity of that made a difference. So she had the Marine Mammal Protection Act that her department has no control over. The feds handle the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and had the Endangered Species Act. So two federal laws they had no say in, really. So I take that and I apply that to one federal law, the Wild Horse and Burro Act, and the Endangered Species Act of, we almost had a listing of the sage grouse back in 2015, I think.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of species out there that feral horses are just wiping out their habitat. So when are we going to do we have to get all the way to the endangered species list where a species gets put on that list before we can take some action to the benefit of elk and mule deer and pronghorn and rabbits and sage grouse in the Intermountain West?
Yeah.
And so it was an interesting discussion because for me, every time I hear something like that, I go and apply it somewhere where elk live. It's like, all right, what is there a parallel in the elk universe? And to me, there's almost like an identical parallel. It's just that some of the species that are being negatively impacted by these feral horses haven't yet been put on an endangered.
Yep.
So you'd be happy. This is the calmest I've ever been talking about feral horses. Whenever we talk about them here at the office and we're going to do some content around feral horses, Marcus is like, just go for a walk before we do this. You gotta be calm. You can't get off the rails with the feral horse thing. So I'm pretty well on the rails with that. But anyhow, those kind of things. And I think when we start talking about, choices between wolves and lions, we start talking about two different jurisdictions in federal law. These are things that you can't ignore, and in the process, if we ignore them, we say we're not picking winners and losers, but we are picking winners and losers by just ignoring that we've put wildlife in these situations, and we've said, oh, we're not going to do anything about it.
Yep.
If I was on that Doge committee, the Wild Horse and Burro Act, we would not have one horse beyond what's allowed under the appropriate. Do I need to get the
email address again so people can refer or recommend you for being on the Doge committee?
I think they're well on their way from what everybody said in the emails here.
I hope so. I hope somebody reaches out to you soon.
I don't think I'm going to get put on any committees, Corey. I'm a little bit too much of a unknown commodity. They're like well-behaved people. That I'm not. A guy who was one of my conservation mentors, he passed away a few years ago, Jim Posowitz. He had a saying. He said, "Beware of an old man in a hurry." Well, now that I'm 60, I know what he's talking about. I feel like I'm in a hurry. There's a lot of stuff I got to get done. So beware of me. I might be one of those guys who's out there, just creating a wreck. But I'm going to get to where I'm going. So it would be if I was on the Doge committee, though, there'd be elk in every playground. That'd be my motto. Elk on every mountain. Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, then I'd have people mad at me. Too damn many elk. Get these elk out of my golf course. But oh well. So what else we got here? I've tried to take us down a path that connected enough of these emails. Tried to cover most of the issues,
aka the rabbit hole.
Oh, this was the best description, and we may have heard it before, but someone brought it up when I was in Portland. Everyone was like, "That Elk Talk podcast, man, I love it. I listen to it as quick as it gets there." I'm like, "Really? Why?" They're like, "Well, it's kind of like NASCAR." I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, the only reason anyone watches NASCAR is they know there's going to be a wreck. They just never know when. So we're all sitting there wondering, okay, we know they're going to get out in the weeds somewhere. When and what's it going to be? I'm like, never thought about it that way. So
that's funny. Several people came up to me and said the same thing. Like, you guys always give yourself a hard time about, not staying on topic or going down rabbit holes. And that's why I just love the discussion. I just love where it goes and love all those rabbit holes. So we got feral horses and sea lions and endangered coho salmon into today's. That's about as deep as that rabbit hole can get.
I'm sure if we take another swath here, we could get to monarch butterflies and horned toads or something. But all right, here's a question. If you had your vacation time, and I'm assuming this person is what the term is, what weekend warrior. Would you take a day here and a day there, or 2 days here, and try to hunt more trips in your elk hunting season, or would you take your 5 vacation days and say, I'm doing it all as one block? I'm gonna leave on Saturday or hunt Saturday, Sunday, my 5 days of vacation, and the next Saturday and Sunday? Or would you try to do a bunch of 3 or 4 day weekends?
That's a good question. I think for me, elk hunting changes so much from day to day during the rut.
Yep.
If we're talking September specifically, that it's going to take you a day or two to find the elk and get into them and then start hunting them. And then if you have to go back to work and wait 5 days and go back, the elk might not be there and might not be doing the same thing. And you're going to spend another day or two finding them again. So you're actually, I would say you're better off taking a swath of 7 days in a row, even if it's not during a primary week, because you're going to learn what the elk are doing. You're going to be there that next day and be able to hunt them for 2 or 3 days in a row before they change or do something else. I'd probably, instead of sprinkling it around, I would take it in one big swath.
Yeah, I'd answer it the same way, even for rifle season. I want to be there because just about the time I feel like I'm solving the puzzle, if I had to go back to work, then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, things have changed. It got a storm or some hunting pressure moved into a camp setup or whatever, and I go back that next Friday for a 3-day weekend. It's like I'm going to spend at least 1, maybe 2 days putting the puzzle back together.
Yep.
And yeah, so that's what I do.
I thought you were going to ask me what week would be the best week to take off.
Oh, well, what is the best week to take off then, Corey?
I'm just finishing up an article on that. I do which week is the best week to hunt elk each year, and getting close to tying that one up. But I am probably more excited about this calendar this year than I have been any year I can remember.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So I like to coordinate. I mean, obviously, we don't get to always pick the best week, and the moon is what it is. But there's a couple factors. The fall equinox is the day when the daylight hours are equal to the nighttime hours. So daylight and darkness are equal, and it usually hits September 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, somewhere in there. I think this year it is September 22nd for the fall equinox, and science has shown that is what triggers the estrus cycle in the cow elk. So they come into estrus, they're ready to be bred based on daylight hours. And so you can kind of say, okay, well, within 5 days, either way, you're probably going to hit kind of a peak of a rut there. So I kind of use that as, general rule of thumb. The peak of the rut is going to hit sometime that week of September 22nd. I want to hunt just before that if I can, because once a bull realizes the peak of the rut's here, he's locked in on, I've got a job to do and I've got a limited time to get it done. So I'm no more Mr., I'm not out looking for fights. I'm breeding cows. And so it can be more difficult to call elk in, a herd bull, especially when he is just locked in on a cow that's in estrus. But leading up to that, they're aggressive. They're wanting to protect those cows because they know they're going to be ready to be bred any day now. So they'll protect them more. They're going to establish their dominance more. So I like to hunt leading up to that fall equinox. So if you get a moon phase that makes the elk be on their feet during the daylight more, meaning if there's a full moon at night, the elk can be up feeding and rutting at night. So they're going to be probably spending more of the day sleeping and in their bedding area. That can be a problem. But when it aligns so that the fall equinox or the week just before the fall equinox, there's not a bright moon, that can be a really good combination. And this year, the new moon in September is on September 21st, meaning there is no moon. and the fall equinox on September 22nd. So that week leading up to the fall equinox, there's going to be no moonlight, meaning the elk are going to have to be active during the day. And the week after the fall equinox, when the peak rut is going to be kicking in, there's also going to be no moonlight. So for 2 weeks there, from like the 14th through the 28th of September, the moon is our friend this year, and that doesn't happen very often.
I need to be elk hunting instead of deer hunting, is what you're saying.
I don't know why anybody would ever deer hunt in September. Deer don't bugle.
Well, you're right. I don't know why they would either, but I got talked into it.
What?
Yeah.
What kind of a deer? You better not be for a white-tailed doe.
No, it's not for a white-tailed doe.
Oh,
I don't know if
okay.
I'll draw. I don't know if I'm on the fringe of having enough points, but
What state?
yeah, I'm not telling.
Why not?
There's a state that has a deadline here pretty soon.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. You don't want to sway the odds.
They have some early rifle tags. Yeah. But since Marcus blew out his patellar tendon the other day, I might not have a camera guy, so maybe I won't do that.
How do you do that?
Skiing.
No.
Yeah, skiing is I've studied enough physics and understand the rules of gravity and momentum and forces that I don't know why any elk hunter would ski. You run the risk of missing an elk season because you rupture a patellar tendon. Yeah. So, I might not have a camera guy this fall. I might be self-filming everything.
Wow.
Yeah. He just had surgery the other day, and they told him, 6 to 8 months recovery, and I could see him doing the math. Well, if it's 8 months, that's middle of October.
Yep.
Yeah, I should have thought about that before you just went flying off that cliff and say, "Hey, watch me!" Oh well.
Well, the good news is rifle mule deer hunt in September is probably a pretty easy hunt to self-film.
I hope so.
Yeah, I'd hate to try to self-film a archery rut elk hunt. That would be.
Have you ever done that? Have you ever self-filmed that? I don't know how you do it.
I have. Yeah, it's
really
tough. Yeah. You're more worried about setting up the tripod and the camera and trying to get in front of it and turn it the right way and make the elk appear where it's supposed to. It's a very dynamic situation that made a lot easier with another person.
Yeah, I wouldn't even try that. I can't self-film a pronghorn coming into a water hole. How would I self-film an elk running and gunning, chasing them up and down the hill? So, yeah, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
So, well, maybe I can be your camp cook in September then, or something. I don't know.
I'll be eating a lot of food. I'll be eating a lot of food this September. I guarantee you that. I'm going to need a camp cook.
Well, after what you did last year, how's Destination Elk? Are you guys just about done?
We're getting close. Yeah, we're 12 episodes in, so we just got 1 or 2 more here to go, and it's the action's picked up considerably. The first 6 or 7 episodes. Obviously, the first episode kicked off with a bang, and one of the teams was eating elk on the first day. In fact, I loved their quote when they walked up to the elk. They looked at each other and said, "Are you even hungry yet?" And he said, "No." So for going 8 days without any food and getting an elk on day 1, that was a huge benefit to them. But after that, there's a little bit of a dry spell where everybody kind of acclimated to being hungry and not having energy. And the last, I think starting with episode 7 or 8 through the end there was a lot more elk action and a lot more elk starting to fall. So
they got acclimated to starvation. That's what.
Yeah, I think change strategies maybe. We're forced to change strategies and found a more effective strategy.
Well, glad I wasn't in on that one. Nothing personal.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'll ever get acclimated to starvation.
No, that's. I don't think I'll ever. It's kind of like Alaska elk. It's good to say you did it once, but you couldn't pay me enough to do it again. And I would even say I would go to Alaska and hunt elk before I'd go another week without food trying to hunt elk.
Really?
I think going a week without food while hunting elk was more difficult than hunting elk in Alaska. Yeah.
Well, I know
So you're saying there's a chance.
I'm not doing either. That's my answer.
There you go. Now, going to Alaska and hunting 8 days without food, that would be the ultimate. And you'll never have to worry about finding me doing that.
No, I'm kind of crossing a lot of things off my list. Like I have this spreadsheet that's my application spreadsheet. Done applying. I've got 9 species among these 11 states where I just said done applying. I'm getting old, Corey.
Yeah.
None of them are elk, though.
I was going to say.
I don't have done applying under the elk column for any state. Nope. None. So, but things like mountain goat and moose and sheep and bison and yeah, I'm not going to send state like New Mexico. They want $3,000 and some dollars just to apply. Wow. They want to hold that money. I'm like, you know what? Well, as bad as my stock portfolio does, I'd be money ahead by letting New Mexico sit on it without even paying me any interest. At least I'd get most of it back. But there's just some states where it's like, you know what? I get it. They got to do what they got to do to protect their residents, to, keep the fees. The fees always get piled on to the non-residents, and that's fine. But I'm a tightwad accountant. People think that you and I just have unlimited budgets. We apply everywhere for everything. So just looking at this calendar here, I think I counted 9. 1, 2, 8. No, 9 species or species in different states where I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going to spend the money. And I'm not going to complain about it. I'm not going to get out on Facebook and tell them, oh, no, they're ripping us off. No, that's what that state's going to do. You know what? I got a decision. Am I going to apply or am I not?
Yep.
I'm not.
Here's the rules of the game. If you want to play, come on in.
Yeah. And so my wife will buy some more walleye fishing tackle with whatever I don't spend in those states. So
there you go.
But have I kept you long enough that now Jennifer has done the snow blowing at your house? Or
I wish, but no. That's my job, and I actually enjoy moving snow. I just have a 4-wheeler with a blade on it, and we this year more than any other year probably are running out of places to stack it, but it's therapeutic.
Yeah, you ever use a snow rake to get the snow off your roof?
I don't. So we made a decision when we built our house not to build a metal roof so it would keep the snow on it for insulation. And here in the valley we live in, we're required to basically, in fact, I had to have an engineer design the roof because of the snow load requirements for the valley. Oh. And he designed it. And I said, you could drive a concrete truck on this roof. And he's like, yeah, that's the requirement that's necessary here. So we leave the snow on the roof all winter, and it insulates the house better. And
gotcha.
But I've seen them.
Yeah, I have a snow rake because on my porch, I have this great big overhanging front porch. I'm like, that looks like an awful lot of weight out there with that porch hanging out there. Yeah, I know it's got some support, but I'd really hate to come home someday and have my porch laying in my front yard. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm out there with the snow rake, pulling it off. But my neighbors probably think, he's finally doing something. Every other day, he runs a snow rake and his wife runs a snowblower.
What's wrong with that guy? He's outside doing work. Never seen that before.
Yeah, I thought he says pay the man. Well, I do like blowing snow. I don't know why that compared to mowing grass. I hate mowing grass. There's just no way I'm mowing grass. But blowing and shoveling snow, I don't know, kind of fun. So, but it's supposed to get 40 degrees here today, so I'm hoping that I don't show up at my house and I'm flooded out because it got so all that snow is starting to melt. But
Exactly. Yeah, we're supposed to get a pretty significant warm up here for the next few days, but then I think I saw next week is supposed to plummet again into
and
cold weather.
that's what's got me concerned, because I think we're going to get. I was looking tomorrow. I think it's going to be almost 50.
Yeah.
And it is going to sink this snow and condense it. And then when it gets cold later next week, it's going to be like ice.
Yep.
And the elk and deer are just going to have a terrible time getting through that to feed. And the wolves are going to be able to walk right on top of it like it's concrete.
It's crazy how they can get around.
Yeah. So that's even if we don't get brutal temperatures or tons more snow in the next 6 weeks, if we get, and it's look like it's shaping up for that, at least around here, we're going to get this warm stretch. That snow is going to just really get a much higher water content in it relative to the depth of the snow.
Yep.
And when that freezes, when that cold weather comes, could be bad.
No, and we saw it. So we had, I don't know, 2 weeks ago maybe, we got 3 or 4 storms in a row where it dumped about 4 feet of powder. And then it warmed up to 40 degrees the next day and rained.
Oof.
And we got that rain on top, so the elevation kind of 5 to 5,500 feet, it had like a 12-inch crust. And then underneath that was just 40 inches of powdered sugar, just so fine. And I went snowmobile. I checked my wolf traps, and I've got a wolf trap line out and was out checking it. And what usually takes me an hour to check the traps took me 6 hours. I got stuck, I think, 6 times. And that snowmobile, it's going along. It stays on top pretty good until you spin that track. And as soon as it spins, it would just go vertical. That track would drop 4 feet, and then the skis would stay up on the crust on the front. And no amount of throttle would get you down to the ground and up out of it. So there I was by myself packing the snow down, literally in this little cave, 4 feet, my chin sticking above the snow line. And I had to pack the snow and then back up and forward and dig a trench out of the hole. And I'd go a quarter a mile or a half a mile and come around a corner and get off balance and dig it right down again. And man, but then 2 days later, I went back out and it had settled enough underneath there, warmed up, and then snowed a little bit on top. And there's a great base. And I think what you're saying, though, is once it gets to a point where it gets warm like that and you get so much moisture in there and then it freezes, elk and deer are going to have troubles digging down through it first to find food. And then second, when they step, they don't stay on top no matter what the 12 inches of crust or whatever it is. They're just heavy enough and pointy feet, so they go right through it. And those wolves, just those big feet, spread that weight and they just run across the top of that snow.
Yeah. And if you're a grouse hunter, you hate that also, because rough grouse will bury into the snow to stay warm on the cold days. And they think it's really fluffy and soft, and they hit it because they don't dig into it. They fly into it. They're like, poof, and they bury themselves in there. All of a sudden, there's 6-8 inches of ice, and you'll find dead grouse on top of the crusted snow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So not only do they fly into the snow and knock themselves out or kill themselves, they also can't survive in the spring if there's dew on the leaves because they drown from too much moisture on the leaves. Now I'm starting to understand why you like grouse hunting so much, because they're not a really intelligent species.
No, their intellect is at my level, so it's a fair game. You get me out there with an elk, and I'm at a serious disadvantage. But with a grouse,
you're well matched.
Yeah, a grouse is not much smarter than the stupid chicken walking around in the neighbor's yard.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe slightly more, but And now any of the listeners who have fancy dogs and European double barrel shotguns and hunt grouse are going to send us an email. You have no idea what you're talking about, Newberg.
And they're right. They're right.
Yeah, that's pretty right. So, anyhow, yeah, I think we made a wide enough loop out off the trail there, Corey, that we covered how these weather patterns can hurt things.
Yeah.
Oh, I ran into a guy in the airport. He's a meteorologist. I'm in the Seattle airport. And he sends me a follow-up email. And he thinks that our jokes about weathermen are hilarious.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And so I had no idea he's such a fanatic elk hunter. He teaches hunter ed. He teaches all kinds of outdoor classes. And eyes run into my gate. But he did send me an email. And I think him and then that other meteorologist, I think her name was Amy from Pennsylvania or Michigan or somewhere. I think we need to have them both on and let them talk about.
Yeah, and let them know it's all in just good-hearted jest.
Yeah.
We like to give other people a hard time because they're... Well,
he was a good sport about it. He thought it was pretty funny.
That's good.
And,
well, it's kind of like us. If you're a meteorologist and you take yourself too seriously, life's not going to be a lot of fun.
No. If you're an accountant and you take yourself seriously, I mean, life's already pretty difficult anyhow. And, oh, wow. You got your tax return done yet, Corey?
Oof. No.
That was, that's all. You didn't have to say no. The was... Yeah.
No, we filed an extension.
Well, you don't have to yet, but you filed an extension already. You're like, I know I'm not.
I know I'm not going to.
I love that. Yeah, February 1st, I'm filing an extension.
It's more a matter of I'm not going to be able to pay that bill anyway, so let's extend it and hope I have more money in October to pay it.
Oh, okay. Well, we brought up a sore subject, but I just got I'm reading an email that just came in while we're here from one of my CPA things. IRS intends to fire thousands of employees.
Oh.
Yeah.
No.
So if you're getting audited, you think it's great that they fired all them employees. If you're waiting on a refund, you're like, what the hell? You fired all these people. I need my money, Joe. Come on, man. What are you doing to me? Are you killing me? So, maybe you don't even have to. If they fire enough people, you won't even have to file, Corey.
No. Well,
you'll be like my dad.
Now I sound like an attorney. If you delay long enough, maybe they'll just go away.
Well, that's what my dad's story was. Did I ever tell you the story about my dad? Before he died?
I'm not sure which story, but...
So, all right. You know he is a logger, right? He's just... He'd get a 1099 once in a while, and I had to file an income tax return. So I'd do these returns for him. So I'd mail them to him, sign here, and I'd give him prepaid postage, and he couldn't go wrong. All he had to do is sign and mail it in. Well, when he died, I was his executor. I go back to Minnesota, and I pull the drawer open he lived in this old rundown trailer house, and he had a desk that he had more junk on that desk. I didn't even know there was a desk there till I started plowing the pile of the stuff away. Pull the drawer open. Here's all those tax returns I've prepared, not mailed in, with a stack of IRS notices that a llama couldn't carry. I'm like, what the heck? Here I am, a CPA, and my old man is about ready to go to tax jail, I think.
Wow.
So, I call the auditor in Bemidji, Minnesota. I'm like, hey, I'm Randy Newberg. My dad, he passed away. I gave him all the information. You got a bunch of notices here. I'm just calling to let you know you may as well write those off because he passed away and you didn't have any money. Us kids had to pay to put him in the dirt. And the guy, he starts laughing. He's like, you're a CPA and you're his son? I'm like, yeah. He's like, do you mind if I tell you a story? I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. He said, my boss made me drive up to Big Falls and find your dad. And I found him at the pub. And I said, Mr. Newberg, we've been sending you all these notices. He's like, yeah, I know. And he said, follow me. He said, so I followed him. He drove his truck down to where he lived at that trailer house there. And he said, I don't have any money to pay these taxes, but you see that over there? And he pointed to a truckload of pole-length birch firewood. He said, that pile of firewood right there is probably worth $400 or $500 if you guys cut it up. So you can have that. That's the only thing I got. You can foreclose, or or take as anything. And so he said, I went back to Bemidji to our office and I told my boss, I think this is going to be an uncollectible tax debt. I said, well, I'm here to confirm to you, it was an uncollectible tax debt.
And that debt doesn't get passed on to the kids.
No, thank God.
Yeah. Takes a little bit away. If you've got a parent or something that is in the same situation, breathe easy. That debt stops with them.
Yeah, so I never had a client get that close to tax jail, just a family member. But anyhow, how'd we get out that far?
No, that's...
I asked you if you got your tax
what we do. That's just what we do, Randy. No use trying to analyze how or why. That's just what we do.
I'm just laughing, thinking, how the heck did we end up there? But as I trace it back, I can see how we got there. And it has nothing to do with elk hunting other than if you're a logger like my dad was, the odds of you having enough money to go elk hunting are pretty slim.
Yep.
You barter in firewood, and I don't think state agencies are going to take firewood in return for an elk.
We should start a little trivia game here and call it like 6 stages of separation or something. You come up with a topic, we will tie it to elk within 6 degrees. 6 degrees of separation.
All right, folks. ElkTalkPodcast.com. Give us the most obscure comment or idea, notion, and we'll figure out a way to tie it to elk hunting. That could be a fun game, Corey.
Man, yeah.
You might have just created a new segment for the Elk Talk podcast.
Yeah, well, I stole it from someone. It's one of the Hair Nation stations on Sirius XM has, I think it's Vince Neil or one of those guys has 6 separations or 6 degrees of separation where they can tie anybody that you send them, any person, any celebrity to somebody in Motley Crue or something. So. But I'm pretty sure we could do the same for elk. So any topic we can tie to elk.
I am absolutely sure we can do that.
We do it on a regular basis. We've already proven we can do it.
Yeah, I think
how did they tie sea lions to elk?
Yeah.
Well, that's only 2 degrees of separation there.
Right. Oh, that I didn't even have to get. That was just on the shoulder of the road there. I didn't even get down in the ditch for that one. But we better let them go, or they're going to think we're completely off our rock. Which, every time we do an episode, they get closer and closer to realizing that we probably don't know what we're talking about.
Fortunately, our rock is set so low that it doesn't take much to climb back on it.
Yeah, but anyhow, folks, anyone want a load of birch firewood in Couchiching County, Minnesota, let me know. I don't know, the neighbors probably went and cut it up and took it by now, but anyhow.
Yeah,
all right,
let's turn them loose.
All right, thanks for being here, folks.